Hello, or welcome to, or welcome back to the channel of the Nasdaq Scalping Bot. In this channel, I show you the progress that I make with a scalping bot for the Nasdaq, but in this part of the channel, we're going to take a look at a new project that I started, and that is the Scambaiting bot. In this episode, we're going to take a look at how we install a Windows environment in Docker so that we can use, together with the AI, to mislead the scammer that he thinks that he is actually connected to a Windows environment. Strongly by, of course, an AI. So, if you want to know how to do this, follow me in. And I start where I left off in the last video, of course. This is what we had, a main pie with in it, if I go all the way up, not that much an import request. Can we make this in one screen? Almost. An import and then a basic class for our AI persona, and we created a simple test to check if llama was connecting with Python, and we actually could make a connection with llama and make a request, and that's what we did last week, and that was not easy. Llama into Docker wasn't that easy as that I expected, but for today I hope that the installation of Windows in Docker will a bit more easier than llama. So to do this, we're going to take a look at DeepSeek. Let's grab DeepSeek. And DeepSeek, if I grab it myself, the next step in the technical part of the planning was the installation of Windows in Docker that can be used and accessed by the scammer by using a remote desktop software, because that's where it all depends on. The scammer wants to connect to the user's desktop so that he can do all kinds of shady stuff while the user is not looking at the screen. That's usually the way they try to do things, or to get information from them, or do all kinds of stuff that's not really good, but he needs to have a connection with the desktop of the user. And that's most of the time is this Windows. So if we want to fake a user with AI, we also need to fake a Windows environment that is able to be accessed by remote desktop software. And DeepSeek gives me that we need to do a Docker container, a Windows Docker container setup with a Docker file. Use Microsoft official Windows server core image. Has a smaller footprint, a server core image. Okay. The Docker file will be Windows Docker file from Microsoft Windows Server Core. Install the basic GUI with a run, and then build the image with the Docker, and then the Docker command to build the image. Then step 2 is launch a container with the remote desktop software. RDP, Windows Scambait. And then configure the RDP inside the container with scambait.win. Enable RDP. Oh, that's what he wants. The RDP of Windows should be activated. I see we have a registry key here that we should add. And then fake user environment, create bait files and simulate slow pay, etc., etc. Okay. But first, we're going to take a look at this. So we need a Docker file. Again, Docker build from windows.dockerfile. I assume that this means that we need to create a file not named Dockerfile, but windows.dockerfile. So I'm going to copy this one, Control C. We go to our Python environment. And gonna create in our project a new file with the name windows.dockerfile. There it is. We don't need the plugin because we have not the right connection. So we have a windows.dockerfile. Now let's go back to, well, so many windows open. Let's get back to, and I'm gonna copy and paste this into the Docker file. So you have now the code run. I'm looking at my own microphone. We have now the code from micro.microsoft.com/windows/server core LTSC 2022. And then install the basic GUI components is an optional. Run PowerShell -command add Windows Feature Server GUI Magnet Infra with a GUI shell. So we want to have the graphic user interface inside the Docker file. Okay, well, yeah, I made a mistake. Oh, you cannot see. Let's take the PyCharm with it. And this one off. I made a mistake. I put the Windows Docker file inside the event file. So it's my mistake. I need to move it outside. Yes, refactor. And now it's inside our project folder. I did create the new file and I needed to create the file outside the venv and inside the project folder. Windows Docker file is back. And now we're gonna try again. And if I call, then we should see a Windows Docker file. Okay. Now let's grab the browser window. Let's see that we get both in it. Yes. So we're going to get a Docker build. Yes. A Docker build -t. Going to name the, yeah, let's keep it Windows. Correct it, Windows dash Scambait. Windows dot file dot. This should be, well, let's take a look if we get an error on it. Or actually something happening. Yeah. No. Did you see it? There was already an error. Oh man. What's wrong? Transferring the Docker file error internal load metadata for MCR Microsoft.com Windows Server Core. Windows Docker file 2. Error failed to solve. Microsoft.com failed to resolve the source metadata for no match for the platform and yeah, I guess that something like this would happen because Microsoft is a commercial So they want to have money. You can't just use any uh, server software from them without having a license and to use it, etc., etc. So let me take a look at it and find a solution, and I will be back with you to how we're gonna do this. See you soon. Well, I put it in DeepSeek, and it gives me a solution that, yeah, it's not the part that I think about, because you cannot use Microsoft environment to do this, but it's the problem of Linux and Microsoft Windows, of course, to enemies of each other. So he's suggesting that we're going to use VirtualBox instead of Docker, and then automate it with Vagrant, and then explain this in Patreon, because that's a separate part of, and I already said it in the last video, some parts of the video I will put separate behind a Patreon environment, because we don't want that scammers becoming as smart as that we are, and circumvent these parts of the scam baiting bot. So the question is, do we have a Linux version that looks like the real Windows? Do we have? And maybe we can use Zorin, or can we use, because it's not necessary to have a Windows 11 or Windows 10 lookalike. We must have a Windows environment. So I had to check because of my Windows version. He said it cannot be done on a Windows Home, and I thought, Pro Enterprise, I do have a Pro version. And I had to check. I do not have. I have the education version, because I was an educator. So I have an education version. You can do a lot, but not the same as the Pro and Enterprise edition. And I do not have a Pro either, an Enterprise edition. So the alternative is now to build from a Ubuntu version and then install the QDRP XFCE, a Windows-like GUI. I'm curious if this really is a Windows file. Well, let's copy this to the Docker file, the new Docker file, not the old one, because I don't want to lose the other one. So I'm gonna copy this one. Go back to PyCharm. I need to switch every window. PyCharm here. And put it in. I'll leave the name Windows Docker file. If it works, then I will rename it to a Linux Docker file. But for now, why not? I'm not here. Already here. Linux Docker file. Renamed it into Linux Docker file. Then we go back to Linux. To the capture file. This one. Again, so many windows open. And we're gonna try again, this time with the Linux Docker file instead of the Windows Docker file. Docker build -t Linux Scambait Linux Docker file. And it's building. and I'll be back with you if the build is done. And we're back with the container, and it took about well over 15 minutes. Let's take a look. We have the seconds somewhere. Yeah, 1800 seconds. So 15 minutes plus to make this complete. So now we have a Docker file with a Linux distribution to use as, let's close this one, close it, close image. As we have now, we have this Linux Scambaiting, a Linux Windows lookalike version that we gonna use inside the Scambaiting bot. Good. So for now, we have 3 containers. Now we have 3 images, not yet 3 containers. We only have 2 containers, the Python and the Scambaiting container. But we've got 3 images. We've got the Scambaiting Windows version, we've got the Scambaiting llama version, and we've got the Python version also. And I don't think we need a Python version. That's strange, but I want to check it out. So, and then we have the Linux Windows lookalike. And for the next week or the next video, we're going to take a look how to combine all of this and see how we can make this work from our perspective as a potential scammer. And we want to take a look at how this all works. Okay, all of this on YouTube available. There's not yet any content that I'm gonna put behind closed doors in the Patreon environment. But if you want to do, there will be at some point code and tips and tricks and things to do in the containers that will be done behind closed doors on the Patreon tier. So if you want to keep on following it, then I advise to do this and dive into the Patreon account. It will be in my description, and make it look and go to the tier and subscribe to the tier. And if I don't see any subscriptions to the tier, then I know nobody's interested. Then I won't continue with the series, because then there's no interest anymore. Okay, well, that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. If you did, like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.